It's carbon taxing that I'm worried about. Because this province has no intention of using any revenue generated by any source to go to its intended purposes. So if they had an education tax, it would not go to education, right? That's it. It's just going to be a money grab. And it's clear from the way that they've negotiated with Ottawa and the rest of it that they really don't have a plan about how to use this. It's simply a revenue grab. And that's the history of every revenue grab ever of all time. Right?
But right now we're going to be under the federal system, right?
Doesn't matter. Provinces are still the ones that are responsible for expending it.
Oh, I thought the federal government was going to return it to people.
It's called robbing Peter to pay Paul. In actual truth, all they're doing is making a circle of money.
Yeah.
No, they're going to
going nowhere and
yeah.
doing nothing.
Yeah, they're going to return a portion of it.
Oh yes, I'm sure
Yeah.
it'll get whittled out as it goes around. That's
So you're going to steal $200 and give $100 tax. It's just, I'm all for if there was actual carbon taxes that would go to straight into renewables, would actually boost up the renewable sector here in New Brunswick. Just not going to happen. Right? Yeah.
So it just seems that with everything that we are concerned about, if we don't deal with that transparency issue, all the other stuff has to wait until we get that dealt with. Because, like you said, with the carbon tax, if we can't trust where that money goes.
It's so convoluted.
Yeah.
Well, actually, even if they had to say where the money went, I mean, one thing, just say, okay, this is the criteria for this money. But it goes right back to the question I asked before. Who is governing? Part and parcel of any job when you go in, you have specific designations and you have specific things that you have to meet. And criteria that is not met, then you don't meet the criteria for the job. And what's happening here is that, I don't see why the public can't have a criteria for a job. This is what you want to do. This is the criteria you must meet in order to do it.
The Greens introduced this idea of having job descriptions for everyone.
And that's where it should be.
Yeah. But they're not going to be elected on those job criteria, right? It's going to be who's ever, most popular in my village. Really? No, that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. Whoever's going to go to the most church suppers. Right? Right? That's what it's all about, is that if you're able to show up and do whatever, nobody looks at it and says, is this guy qualified to have the job? I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed by some of our politicians.
And it is embarrassing.
Yeah, really, they couldn't be running a car wash. You've entrusted them to run the province. Right? And it's ministers, deputy ministers, and it goes on, A lot of nice people in government, but,
So where do we start with this? What do we have to do to change things around?
Make it an election issue.
Yeah.
Start to raise the voices. Start to demand accountability. It should have started with the Donald Arsenault case of where people should have been up in arms. They should have been marching in the legislature. How is it possible that a minister had 2 jobs? If I was running a business and then had a secret side job, you'd be fired. Right? So there's a 0 degree of accountability. And for the rest of it, the Premier decides that he wants to go to a public event in Saskatchewan and promote it to the public. Great. Do it on your dime. Don't charge the province for it. If you want to have private, if I was the ultimate Frisbee promoter of New Brunswick and I was Premier and flew off to an ultimate Frisbee competition or something else in the public dime, everybody would be ripping and roaring. Yeah.
I guess when I'm listening to you, I find it hard to imagine a way forward because I'm going to go back to the carbon one. So the federal carbon program is supposed to be revenue neutral. Now, I'm not saying people don't cheat. I'm not saying they don't lie. I'm not saying there's not patronage. I agree with all of that. But on the other hand, if the government announces a program and says it's revenue neutral,
Yeah. So who got the first?
Never, ever, how do you move ahead if everything is always wrong?
No, it's
so
not.
if they're saying we have a revenue neutral program and we just throw eggs at it, how do we get ahead?
Okay, so who got the first discount on the carbon tax? In New Brunswick, who got the first discount?
Perfect.
Specifically what in Energy Power?
Coal plant.
Coal plant in Beldoon. Beldoon coal plant. Coal, the #1 emitter. Got absolutely taken off the list for carbon taxation. What else?
Well,
and it goes,
it got reduced. I can't argue with you, but it's still a revenue neutral program.
No, it's there. I can make a revenue neutral program here where I empty all your wallets out and put it in mine and say it's revenue neutral. No, it's just smoke and mirrors on that stuff. And that's what I've said. Look at the real reality on the ground. Is that as soon as they announced this, they started giving discounts out to the worst emitters in the province. Irving's got their discount, Baldoon got their discount, time after time after time. So if that isn't proof enough that this isn't going to work, I don't know what is.
But what I'm saying is, how do we move ahead at all? Like, maybe it sucks,
Don't give those
but
guys a
maybe
break.
it's better than what we had, is what I'm trying to say. So how do you get anywhere?
So you elect MLAs that are running on doing something about the corruption issue. That's step one. Is there one MLA who has spoken out about this in the legislature? Not a one.
So we picked the wrong ones.
Yeah, so, Gerald, you didn't run hard enough, I guess. You didn't talk to me beforehand. Right? So this is the problem. Electing MLAs who can change the legislation. Electing MLAs who are willing to stand up and stop this. That's where it starts.
Where's the money going to fight it, that they're doing it right now? I mean, that's the other problem, is right now they're fighting a tax that they're probably going to inevitably end up with.
Right.
And where's that money going?
Taxes.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of dollars that are going into nothing.
Well, no, I mean, the amount, if you want to look at waste in New Brunswick, and nobody's ever done this, so look at wastage, and 300 million for ONB when they cannot show that they've created one job, because every year that they've invested billions, still nothing comes out. No more increase in the actual job numbers. So we did this back in, I did this looking at the numbers between 2006 and 2013, before the 2014 election. All of the announced economic development initiatives of the province produced 0 jobs. Actually, there was less jobs then than there were now. So you can say, yeah, there's a lot of different factors go into it. But all of that money that's spent in tax breaks and everything else do not generate jobs. Be far better off. Let's just throw the money out the window. Start flying around with a helicopter, throwing money out the window. Maybe turkeys, I don't know. WPRP or something. Something, you gotta do something, right? So at the end of the day, yes, that's, if we look at the millions and millions and millions that are wasted on nonsense, right? Economic laboratory initiatives. They have a policy research initiative that the province is putting money into, right? So they're supposed to be getting the universities to produce these papers. One of the presidents of the university said, I have yet to see one paper. I'm not actually allowed to see them, even though we're paying part of the costs. Case after case after case. That's why everybody got excited about the francophone things. It's just the way things are done. Insiders get on committees, get to decide stuff. So all of this economic development stuff is just money thrown out the window. Hasn't done anything. The real issue is changing the anti-monopoly. And nobody's working on that. So if you want to change things, that's what you have to push for. Make a fair business environment in New Brunswick. Make it fair for everybody. Everybody should pay their fair share. And that's it. Right? Then everything would bloom overnight. Right? No more insider deals, no secrecy, whatever else. If it's good for business, you can show it on paper. Right? No undue advantage of any one business. And that's the way out of it. Right? Instead of all of the energy put into these, you know, and I call them Jack and the Beanstalk scams that they have. You say, oh, if you just buy some magic beans and plant them, everything will be good tomorrow. Just, you know, put that money in. Increase the public sector. If you're looking to create jobs and you want to have better roads, we have a terrible road situation, right? There's things that you could do that would be less waste of money than what we do. You know. Anything else? Have you eaten up all your good folks' time tonight
That's all right.
with a depressing subject?
We're going to give us a joint when we leave, so we'll be happy by the time we get home, right?
There we go. I thought you'd have your own shop set up there, Gerald.
Pardon me?
I thought you'd have your own shop set up by now. You're a businessman, you know where the money is. Right? So, yes, we can do something. But it means getting our voices focused on one thing. Dealing with the accountability and transparency issues in the province. Forcing the government to address this issue. If we don't, Nothing good will happen. Province will go bankrupt, and that's it, right? We'll all be sent off to some labor camp out in Fort McMurray or something. In chains.
Do you have a manifesto?
No.
I mean, how do we do this?
No, how to do it? Yeah, sure, there's lots of information that's out there.
No, I mean, really, I mean, if you're going to bring people forward, you're going to get a wave of people coming forward and pushing for better, for change, for less corruption, less everything. You have to have a handbook.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, you have to.
As a student of Marxist-Leninism in the Soviet Union, I tend to be skeptical about little red books.
I'm not saying you have to write the rules. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice if there was some
Like a how-to thing.
guide? Like, I would love to know I would love to have what you have in your head on paper as far as all of the various corruptive behaviors over the last 50 years in New Brunswick. Many of the things you mentioned, I had no idea about. I'd love to know more. I wouldn't know where to look.
Well, let's see. If everybody's willing to donate 10,000, I'd be able to do this full time. Otherwise,
You could start a
I'd have to go
GoFundMe.
back to Eastern Ukraine and work there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on electoral reform, because to me that seems like that's the most direct way to fix this. Is to have
Well-
a more democratic approach to our elections.
Sure, but they really haven't worked. So, I mean, one of the problems is people look on this and they say, same thing. Before the election, all of the signs, minority power. Then all of a sudden they said, oh shit, minority power means the People's Alliance is in power. Oh, we don't like that. We don't like that minority power stuff. So, I mean, you know, if you look at proportional representation and other things, also there could be negative effects to that. The issue really is not about changing how we get elected. It's about who gets elected, right? It's the quality of the MLAs. And people don't look on their MLA. They pick the team that they like. They don't even look at what qualifications the MLA has, who they are as a person. They look at, this is my team. My team are the good guys. Everybody else is the bad guys.
So I feel like the missing component here really is empowerment, people's empowerment,
Yes.
and actually how do we really change that climate in New Brunswick and participation? Because everything you're talking about comes after people are empowered and engaged. Because there are, you know, those of us who are engaged in different facets and are aware of all the issues that you brought up regarding corruption. But how do you actually engage and have empowerment with the culture of New Brunswick? And for me, that's the elephant. Because it has to really start with people.
Yeah.
And feeling they can participate and wanting to. What can you offer? And feeling like they have a say and it is their community. And they're not disempowered by the structure that currently exists and complacent. So for me, that's what it comes down to. And I think we need to reimagine or imagine what that could be.
But when you look at the effect that, for example, Rod Cumberland, myself, and Charles Stereo had. So when we started in 2014, nobody wanted to talk about this great resource giveaway or corporate capture. All of that stuff we said that we were nutters, or the glyphosate issue, right? So we used to have this thing where Charles would come out and talk about the corruption stuff that goes on, and I'd talk about some other stuff, scare the people a little bit more. And then Rod would come out and scare the pants off of everybody with the glyphosate, realizing what it's going to actually do to you. It had an impact. It opened up a lot of people's eyes. We see social movements now that are opening up. The biggest social movement in the province is our Stop Spray thing. Who could have imagined? Right? Still, we have no resources, just me and Carolyn and a couple of, sidekicks, and that's basically it. But still, you see the mobilization that's happened with that. Now it became a major election issue. If you said this 3 years ago when Rod was doing his presentations, nobody would have believed it. So yeah, you can mobilize people. People's eyes are being awakened. The problem is there's so much crap that's out there from social media. Yeah.
But also, the media is not really that great. So there's still a lot of people relying on the traditional media, and I think they just don't hear about a whole lot of the things. And then you've got social media that can go a little crazy. So it's almost like there's no normal in the middle kind of thing going on.
I definitely feel it is a component, but I feel like just the desire to be engaged or be empowerment, I think that's a social, cultural issue, particularly for New Brunswick. So I agree with what you're saying, but again, I feel like that's one step
Yeah.
along, where we really have to look at what is in our culture here and how do we change that to really feel like you have something to offer and you
Still
can
a lot of
participate.
education, I think, you know, awareness.
Yeah, and it involves people feeling like they've made it.
And so how do you impart that in the young? You know, how do we create that culture?
I certainly won't be.
Well, why don't we
getting
talk to our
public
education
spaces
minister
now.
and say, forget about the Chinese, let's start teaching ethics or civics.
Good.
The level of awareness
Yeah.
even among young people of what the legislature actually does.
But even within our family structures and communities, like how do we foster, you know, instead of what will I do, but how can I help or who can I be like, what can I offer? Just changing how we perceive ourselves. So I think at a very fundamental level, it starts with changing how we have our community structures and building on that. And of course, education. We get to that.
But more community-based stuff. That's why I say, look at the anti-Ganesh movement back in the 1920s, Moses Cody. That's exactly what he did, community by community. And community mobilization. We forgot all about it. We taught the world about credit unions. Right? We've done a lot of fantastic things, and it was all done that way. Right? Going out to each village and town hall and talking to people. That's the only way to really do this.
Moses Cody knew that he had to teach people how to read and write. And so we have phenomenally high illiteracy and low literacy rates here.
What are you talking about? We're 51% functionally illiterate. Or
So-
functionally literate, sorry.
Probably getting worse in the school system.
Yeah, so at least half of us can read.
But we have to do videos. We have to do something that reaches a wider.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why actually one of the things that I'm working on right now is doing a 30-minute weekly TV show that's going to be about corruption and extractives and stuff like that. We've got a couple of sidekicks who know the business and stuff, and this is exactly it. It's how you reach
Are you
people.
talking
Yeah.
about podcast?
No, we're talking about video.
On where? Posted where?
Post it on our website.
Oh,
Yeah, so we're going to post it on the website. Maritime Watch. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to research because you have to have your facts straight.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion going to be a social media crap thing. It's going to be actually well researched, and you have to have all your ducks in a line or you get your butt suited up. Yes, ma'am.
Just back to electoral reform, one of the things I was thinking about when you said about it's the team you're on, well, with proportional representation systems, the team you're on doesn't matter nearly as much. You get a lot more diversity getting elected, and so I think probably you do improve the quality of your MLAs. But I'm just wondering if in your research, because you mentioned earlier that Canada has higher levels of corruption, and I know that there's most countries in the world do proportional representation forms of democracy. There's only really the ones coming out of the British Commonwealth and the U.S. that are left that are using the first past the post. So I'm just wondering if you know if there's any relationship between the electoral system and
Sure.
levels of corruption and corruption legislation and enforcement.
Yep. Proportional representation leads to greater dysfunction within the government. If we look at Belgium, we look at other things. Where you look at Israel, where you actually increases the level of corruption. Because what happens is that you have more people fighting to get in. So their time frame is very short. In power, then they want to grab as much as possible. Same thing with term limits. So if you limit people's terms in power, that's probably the best impact that you actually have. And I talked about this with a guy he's the only FBI agent who's in the U.S. Congress. So he's a lot of fun. And he ran the anti-corruption office in Washington and in Los Angeles. And what he said was, those states, for example, that have term limits are the ones that have the least amount of corruption. Limiting people's time and power is the greatest impact that you have, rather than how they get elected. More parties is actually going to lead to a diverse situation in which there's more competition for people to get in and more quicker payoffs for those that are in power. So it doesn't, I mean, you look at the Belgian case, you know, it took them 2 years to form a government. You look at other places. It's nice, it's more representative, but is more representative really? I mean, I don't know. When I read social media, I don't know if I want more direct democracy, because there's a lot of people with a lot of crazy ideas. So if you look at what happened with Sweden in terms of, you know, now having 20% neo-Nazis in power, right?
So what level of term limit works?
The fewer years possible. 1 term, 2 terms. 2 terms is usually the standard, right? As soon as somebody gets 8 years in power, then they're already indebted to somebody, and they're already on the table. Most places. Simple solution, but rarely used. Anything else before we go battle out in the snow?
Where's your next meeting?
I don't know. Where's it going to be? Gerald, I have to come up your way, I guess.
I'd love to have you come.
Carolyn's working on a Fredericton thing, so I guess Fredericton's the next.
Oh,
It's also limited time. I got about 800 things that I got to do while I'm home. Get the boy a passport and deal with my dad who's not doing too well. And fly up to Ottawa and get myself a Ukrainian visa. And a bunch of
And snowstorms.
And snowstorms, but I'll try and squeeze in as much as possible, like I do every time. I spent all last summer on the road, right? We're stop spraying shows. It was a good one in Petty, though. Almost got into a fist fight, so. And Gerald Gogan asked me if I do Petty as well, so I'll try and do a Petty show as well. So probably pretty close. So anywhere, I mean, if anybody's willing to help me with the organizing, I'm more than willing to go.
I think if you could learn old-time fiddling, I think you're
Yeah,
gonna be a
there we
little
go.
bit.
Get the buddy dance. He plays guitar, don't you, Sam? So you'll get out your guitar.
Sing some sarcastic songs.
Yeah. That's why I say you can't play it on the TV thing. You can't play it as a straight thing because, if you're going to say, no, the minister then had a second job. You can't say that with a serious face. You got to do a bit of comedy as well. Infotainment. That's the key. I agree. That's what Moses Cody did as well. All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.